So thanks everyone for joining us today for the April section meeting. We're going to have a presentation on the Metro D line. Our presenters today are Shaheen and Ryan. Shaheen Khazra Jafari is the Metro D line project manager at Metro Transit. He joined the team in August 2019 to manage the project through design and construction. Throughout design, Shaheen worked to negotiate and coordinate with other agency partners, execute various project agreements and contracts, secure project funds, acquire project easements, and ensure the project stays on schedule. He's a longtime Minneapolis resident and lives along the future D-Line corridor. Ryan Bauman is the HDR project manager. His role on the Metro D-Line is leading the consultant team through design and construction. As the project manager of the design and construction of the Metro C and D line BRTs in Minneapolis, Ryan's team helped Metro Transit successfully transition from design into construction by delivering both projects under the engineer's estimate. His extensive background in urban transit includes involvement in over 40 bus rapid transit routes, streetcar, light rail, and commuter rail projects around the globe. When not spending time on transit, he spends the rest of North on the Lake with his wife and 2 kids. So thank you guys for being here to present with us. We should have time at the end of the presentation for questions. If you have questions during the presentation, you're welcome to put them in the chat and then I'll moderate those questions. Or we'll have a round robin at the end if you'd like to ask them yourself. Ryan or Shaheen, would you like to start sharing your presentation?
Sure, I can go ahead and share my screen here. If you could just confirm, you could see what I have showing up. All right, so as Courtney, is the presentation showing?
I am not seeing it yet.
No.
No. Okay. That's odd. It's saying it should be showing it. Of course. Let me try again.
Oh, we got
okay,
some
how
action.
about now? All right, good. So
I can see your, there we go.
There we go. Yep, that was my background. That was my wife for who is interested, and that was a trip out to Machu Picchu, which I strongly recommend. It's quite an experience once travel comes back, of course. Or say once COVID's gone. So again, Courtney, thank you so much for the introduction, and thanks to ITE for this this opportunity and privilege to talk about the D-line here. So as Courtney mentioned, Ryan and I will go through this presentation. I'll just dive right in with that background that Courtney gave. What I'll cover today, and what the two of us will cover actually, we'll talk about generally what BRT and arterial BRT are, talk about the D-line, just an overview of the project and also construction. I'll cover a little bit the coordination and the partnerships that we have had and continue to have with other agencies on this project. Then we'll get into the timeline and current construction status, and talk a little about BRT design characteristics and considerations, and then how that played in with the D-line design and construction. And we'll open it up to your questions. So bus rapid transit, BRT for short, is an enhanced, more efficient, higher quality bus service. You pay at the station and you board at either door on the bus. There are higher elevation platforms, lower bus floors, which are set up to allow for easier and quicker boarding and deboarding of the bus. There are additional amenities at the stations, which I'll get into later. There's reduced wait time at traffic lights. Typically with BRT stations that we work on are placed on the far side of the intersection, which is past the traffic light. And the traffic lights are often equipped with transit signal priority in order to let that green light stay on just long enough for the bus to pass so it doesn't get stuck behind the red light. There are more frequent trips with BRT. So with Metro Transit BRT, they typically operate at about every 10 minutes most of the day. And there are fewer stops per mile, roughly a stop every half a mile or so. So in a sense, BRT, you could think of it as light rail on wheels, traveling through busy city streets. Now with arterial BRT, Metro Transit conducted an arterial transit corridors study back between 2011 and 2013. During this study, it looked at the urban corridors with high ridership bus routes that connect major destinations for the possibility of implementing BRT service. As a result of this study, the conclusion was that BRT service in these corridors could help improve traffic speed or travel speed, I apologize, and increase reliability and enhance the overall ride experience and create a faster connections as well with for our customers. So what came out of that study was what we saw with the design and construction of the A line in 2016, which goes from the 46th station generally through Ford Parkway and up along through Snelling Avenue. And then in 2019, the C line, which was constructed and it travels through downtown Minneapolis and generally through Penn, and then all the way Penn Avenue and to Brooklyn Center Transit Center. Following those, next in queue was the D-Line BRT, which is currently in construction and we'll talk about here. And there will be future arterial BRT lines as well that will probably, that will be connecting through these yellow routes that you see here, which are the corridors that were studied in that 2011 to 2013 study that was conducted. So I talked, I briefly mentioned amenities, station amenities, and at our arterial BRT stations, what you see on this photo is typically what we have included. We have our pylons, which are the signature BRT markers that are identifiable and our customers can see from a distance to know where our stations are. With these pylons, they're also equipped with LCD monitors, which provide real-time transit information. In addition, we've got our shelters, and unlike our standard bus shelters, this shelters also include additional amenities such as heating, light, additional seating, and security cameras, as well as emergency telephone, which is connected to our Metro Transit Police Department. Something that's not as visible in this photo are our fare collection equipment and the fare card validator. These allow for our customers to, again, pay at the station and quickly board the bus. We've got trash and recycle receptacles, and this is maintained routinely by our engineering and facilities. We have, again, additional seating with benches outside of the shelter area. We have bike racks, and at some stations we have either a lean rail or a shorter concrete seat wall that would separate the platform from the sidewalk that would go behind the station. And in addition to that, we have, again, with the signature look and aesthetics, we've got colored concrete at our platforms, And we also have a cast iron truncated dome strip that goes along the platform to warn our customers from the curb. And so this, in general, is what you would see at every BRT station within the metropolitan area. So with the D-Line BRT, what you see here is the corridor through which it will travel. Going from north to south, it starts at Brooklyn Center Transit Center, traveling generally through Fremont and Emerson, through downtown Minneapolis to Chicago Avenue, and moving south through Chicago Avenue to Portland Avenue, American Boulevard, and finally to Mall of America. I will get into what these different colors are later. However, these circles are where we currently have our D-Line BRT stations located. With the black circles, black and white circles, being stations that are shared between the C line and the D line. So they're currently operational with C line utilizing them, and the D line will travel through there as well. Most of them being in downtown Minneapolis. So this is an 18-mile line corridor. It travels through 4 different cities of Brooklyn Center, Minneapolis, Richfield, and Bloomington. Currently, the Route 5 operates in this corridor and serves our customers. The Route 5 is the highest ridership route in the region, even during the pandemic. And this is a corridor where 1 in 4 households do not own a vehicle, and they rely on public transit to get to work or school or any other activities. The D-Line is a $75 million roughly BRT project that will substantially replace the existing Route 5, and it will provide a more reliable and a more equitable service to our customers in this corridor. It will operate at just about every 10 minutes, excuse me, and it's in approximately 20% faster than the existing Route 5. So if you want to do the math, the Route 5 currently from Mall of America all the way to Brooklyn Center Transit Center takes somewhere around an hour and a half. And with the D-Line BRT, that's estimated to be brought down to just slightly over an hour. It will be all-day service, and there will be stops at roughly every half a mile. And so while our BRT line will be operating at stops every half mile, we still have our Route 5 bus stops that will be in operation in between. And while the D-Line will be substantially replacing Route 5, Route 5 will still continue to operate to fill in that gap in between. Something else to mention here, you'll notice that we don't have anything currently at Chicago and 38th. As you know, with the murder of George Floyd less than a year ago, and the civil unrest that followed, that intersection, which was initially and continues to be part of the D-Line BRT project, it was removed from our construction plans so that we can continue a conversation with the community, with the city's leadership, to better understand what we can do in serving the community with our station. So that location is one that will have more work to be done in the future, in the coming year and months. So let's get into the construction a little bit. I wanted to share just a couple of snapshots of 2 different construction plans that we have along the corridors, or a sample rather. What you see in the upper right corner, this is generally speaking what construction will consist of for BRT stations only. And this is within the city of Minneapolis. So you see we have our bumped out station platforms, which, by the way, is another element of the project where our buses will stop in lane as opposed to pulling in, which again allows for a more efficient service. So we have our bumped out station platforms where we will have our shelter, pylon, and other amenities. We have bus pads that we are constructing within the city of Minneapolis at the request of the city, where our buses would be stopping. And this is to minimize the amount of wear and tear on the road with concrete bus pads in place. So we have those. We have new ADA pedestrian ramps and often signals as well. And then there's some street pavement replacement as well. Many cases where we have a bus pad, we tend to extend that work out in the street as up all the way to where our platform footprint is. And then there's also utilities that may be impacted in the area as a result of our project that may need to be relocated. So what we've done is we also make sure we replace areas in city or street pavements where we have impacts. Aside from that, again, because it's bumped out, you see that it's tapered back in. And while I don't have a case here showing, sometimes this taper causes the need for having some driveway reconstruction as well. On this other corner, the lower left corner, you see a lot more work being done. This is an intersection where we're having almost a complete intersection reconstruction. You see we have our, again, platforms in the north and south quadrants, but then in the opposing quadrants, we have additional work, additional sidewalk, pedestrian ramp improvements, and again, oftentimes signal improvements as well. And this work typically has been the result of coordination with the city and the county and their request to include this scope for work that they would otherwise have to come in and perform. And again, with the amount of work that we may have at these quadrants, it impacts the amount of street work as well. So in this case, we're reconstructing quite a bit of the street pavements in this area. So construction throughout the corridor, and with what you saw with different stations, it's a lot of pocket construction, and it varies from intersection to intersection in terms of what the level of scope is at each location. And just to share some photos, these are from the C line, very similar work that we had there. So you see the bus pad, there is either mill and overlay or complete reconstruction of the street that may be needed. Then behind the curb, you have the platform that's being constructed with the cast iron strip and the colored concrete. And then you come to the shelter, the pylon that would be installed, along with the other amenities at each station, which brings us to kind of what the finished product would look like, typically speaking, once it's all done. And I will note that another item that we include is oftentimes we try to have the sidewalk, the pedestrian access go pass behind our platform area so that we don't have conflict of use. And that's typically what you will see. However, there are areas as we coordinate with our partners where they're due to lack of space, we end up having more of a shared path in front of the shelter and maybe have the shelter further back. We also have different sizes of shelters that we use. So here you see a small shelter, and depending on ridership demand at different stations, we may use larger shelters as well. So in addition to those permanent station platforms that I spoke to, as excuse me, with our construction, we also have what we call temporary stations as well. In this case, we have one temporary station that will be constructed with the D line. It's at Portland and 77th. And as we went through design, it became clear that in coordination with MnDOT, the MnDOT 494 expansion project in this area was going to extend within and into our D-Line BRT platform footprint. So one of the things that we've been mindful of and we've been trying to incorporate in our design is to eliminate construction rework, and avoid having a situation where we put in something only to have new construction be torn out by another agency or vice versa. So in this case here, this is a photo of a temporary station that we have at Olson and Humboldt. And what you see is typically we may construct, we may pour a concrete pad, but then we have a standard shelter that's provided, which will, however, include heat and light. There is it may be difficult to see, but there is an LED sign that provides, again, real-time transit information. There is trash and recycling that will be collected. And there are your fare collection equipment and fare card validators. So it provides the same level of service, same quality of service to our customers, and ensures that we're able to maintain continuity of service. But it's also a temporary measure, which isn't as intrusive as a permanent construction fee in this area. And it's meant to be replaced with a permanent platform eventually. And that's something that we're going to be coordinating with MnDOT to have as a part of the MnDOT project. So I've touched on coordination quite a bit as I've talked about this. And, as I mentioned earlier, with our project going through 4 different cities, and on county roads and being adjacent to projects with other agencies, it's been critical for us to make sure that we communicate often and as much as possible, and try to make sure that we're talking with the various entities that may be whose backyards essentially we may be operating in. Pretty much the entire D line is constructed in public right of way, which also adds to the need of that communication. So we've been closely coordinating some of our partners that I'll mention here: City of Minneapolis, Richfield, Bloomington, Hennepin County, and the Department of Transportation. I mentioned that there are locally requested scopes from Minneapolis, Hennepin County, and the City of Bloomington that are part of this project. And that has been as a result of this constant communication. Furthermore, we've made sure to include the design requirements that each one of these cities and agencies may have that should be part of our project. So we've made sure to include those. We continue to coordinate with them today through construction to make sure necessary permits and traffic control measures are communicated, and that our contractor and our agency partners are all on the same page in what's going to happen. On the flip side of it, there's work that, in coordinating with these agencies, we know, for example, Hennepin County has projects at Portland and 60th through 66 with the Portland Bike Gap project, and then also the Weber 44 project, where, again, instead of each agency coming in and tearing up the road twice, we've been able to minimize that impact to residents and the community by including D-line, all the D-line subgrade and foundation work into Hennepin County's contracts at these locations. And then with the D-line, just installing the shelters once that work is complete. Along the same lines, the station that I mentioned, Portland and 77th, that will be part of MnDOT's project. And then Chicago and 38th, as the conversation continues at that location, a future Chicago and 38th station will be part of a future City of Minneapolis project at that intersection. So there's a lot of close communication and partnership that's been happening throughout planning, design, and will continue to happen through construction with these agencies in order to ensure that we minimize impact to residents, but then also to make sure that what we're constructing and the projects that we have are done in a most cost efficient and cost effective manner. So to talk about timeline, 2021, this is where we're at today with construction underway. We had our station locations approved back in 2018 through the planning study that was done. We went through design in 2021, completed that by late, or I apologize, 2020, completed that by late 2020. And with construction underway, the goal is to have substantial completion by November of 2022 in order to have the D-line be operational by December of 2022. From 2022 and beyond, we're going to continue work on those remaining stations at Portland and 77th, Chicago and 38th, Osseo and 47th to complete development of those and have those integrated into the D-line BRT system as well. Getting into construction status. So as of April 5th, when the contractor officially broke ground in this area, with the photos that you see were taken on that date at Chicago and Franklin. And you see that they had already started removing the street pavement in this area. There's traffic barricades that are put up. And I think today they've actually gone through most of the removals and are ready to begin work on the curb and gutter construction. Right now, our contractor is active at Fremont, Emerson, and Lowry, 7th and Bryant, Fremont and Plymouth, Chicago and 14th, Chicago and Franklin, Chicago and Lake Street, and Chicago and 34th Street. And we've been having construction progress meetings on a weekly basis to understand where they're going to be and what work they're going to be performing in the area. I mentioned traffic barricades, and I think it's important to mention that, you know, with a project of this magnitude in such busy roads, there are going to be significant detours that would be placed and temporary intersection closures as well. So I talked about these colored nodes along the corridor, and as you can see, there are several intersections throughout the city of Minneapolis where we will have closed entirely for 1 month with up to 3 months of lane restrictions. And then we have intersections where there will be lane restrictions in place for anywhere between 2 to 6 months in order to afford the contractor enough space to perform all the construction that needs to occur in these areas. So there will be detours in place. In fact, they're already in place for both vehicles and transit buses. Our buses right now are Route 5, which would typically run down through this corridor, is currently going from downtown Minneapolis through to 42nd Street through Portland and Park Avenue. So that's the current detour in place. And there's been a lot of public engagement and outreach to make sure that our customers and the community is aware of these changes. There are also traffic detours that we have implemented along this area as well, and it shifts as the contractor moves up and down the corridor. However, it's also our goal and intent to make sure that we continue to maintain access, both pedestrian and vehicle access for all the local residents and businesses in the area. So our contractor is required to provide temporary pedestrian access where they're working, and any areas where, for example, we have road closures, we do work with local businesses to make sure we have traffic still coming to their businesses, or if we have a driveway that's impacted, we will be communicating with them to either identify the timing of full closure of that driveway until it's fully reconstructed, or to determine whether it should be constructed in phases or some other manner. So that's everything that I had to touch on. I think one item that I left out that I should quickly mention as far as features, BRT features, another component that we will have constructed along this entire corridor is an underground fiber optic network. And this is infrastructure that the D-Line will rely on for its real-time transit information, as well as the ETEL and the security cameras. It's also a component that, again, in coordinating with our agency partners, that's also shared with Hennepin County and the city of Bloomington, where they also wanted to have fiber optic running in some portions of this corridor. And instead of having multiple conduits, we have multiple strands running through a single conduit in the area. So with that, I'll hand it off to Ryan to talk about some of the other components here. And let me see, I gotta hand this back. I do apologize. I'm fluent in Teams and WebEx, but not as fluent with Zoom. It looks like Ryan's already taking control.
Well,
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Can you hear me, Shaheen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, all right. And you see a screen, but probably not here. Be my eyes if it goes full screen. Uh-oh, you're probably seeing the wrong view of this.
I think I can see your...
There.
There we go. Yeah.
Looking good? All right. Well, thanks, Shaheen. So first, I got to say, if anyone has any issues, lives in this area and has issues with the traffic control, just give Mike Martinez a call and blame him. But
wow.
I didn't know if you had control to unmute or not here.
Hi, Mike.
But anyway, as I was going through this, I don't want to bore you, but I want to hit on a few of the nuances that BRT design has over just a typical maybe roadway, some of these unique characteristics. I started my career actually in traffic. I see Nick Erpling's on over at RLK a long time ago here, but now I'm pretty biased towards transit, so don't like to admit I was ever a traffic engineer, with all due respect. But one of the first nuances is really, designing for all users. And this goes well beyond just ADA. It's inclusive of age or mobility. Looking at how is someone going to load their bike, how to speed up boarding for elderly, or my favorite is just what would Lincoln do on a platform? My son on the left, how do I get him and my daughter and my wife all on and off of a bus with a stroller? And then close considerations towards maintenance. It snows here, and what do you do with that? So really, when it comes to laying out a lot of those amenities and station elements, those are things that, something different to think about as people are going to be at these spaces. And then again, safety and security. So there's a whole FTA process on safety and security that goes into threats and vulnerabilities of this infrastructure, but it really comes back to some key elements that's common among, any project, which is, lighting that focuses on that boarding area or where ticket money exchanges are happening. Being a thoughtful neighbor and not having light pollution onto, someone's front window. Adequate sight lines, CPED principles. And then filtering that into the camera coverage. As we have cameras out on these platforms, they provide a sense of security to people. So it's critical that there's someone on the end of that emergency telephone to answer and be able to see back to that platform. And, definitely on these more vulnerable areas, adjacent to the roadway, or again, where fare collection is occurring. And then what's really neat about transit and BRT projects is that it's really it's the first and last, interaction with riders. And how do we use this as an element to help not only serve the frequent riders, but also build those first-time riders. So that branding that's out in front of your business and out in front of your home, that's the D-line. That's the bus you take and the bus that you're going to get home from. It makes that ease of use, and then really that connectivity and connectivity not just in the real-time sign perspective. And I had to put this technology shot in the middle here just for the traffic controller type of nerds on the call. That's all the intelligent infrastructure that's inside of these real-time information cabinets that's relaying when's the next bus coming, and gives that sense of equity back to the community, of bringing these premium amenities to all these communities. On the best bang for your buck in transit is really BRT. And then I mentioned community. Well, that first and last impression into the community is usually referred to as that first and last mile connections. At the station platforms themselves, we have bikes, not stores, but bike racks and connectivity, but it goes well beyond just a bike rack. It's how do the existing bike lanes interact with the BRT system, as you see on one of our renderings here from 42nd Street. It carries through the intersection, but also that pedestrian realm. If you're riding a bus, your trip doesn't start and stop at the bus stop. It starts and stops at your place of work, your business, the grocery store, the hospital. And so connecting back into that connecting that public realm into the private realm is really critical. And now kind of bringing it from that, high level 30,000 foot look and dive into a couple of the unique pieces to D-Line itself. And I like starting with history. I don't know if through the past year and the pandemic, if anyone else has fallen asleep to PBS documentaries, but I definitely have had my share. So hit you with a few history facts here. This old corridor was originally the Emerson Fremont line that operated from 1891 till 1953. That connected to the Chicago Avenue line. And what's really neat about this is back then they had headways at 3-minute peak periods and even 5-minute off peak. I mean, that's how this whole community was built up among a whole historic streetcar route. That's definitely visible today and something pretty unique. I found an old photo of the streetcars up on Emerson and Broadway. And if you notice all the wires and the building on the far right, that building's still there in our station rendering here on the bottom left of that Broadway station. That's really neat to be reconnecting this community with what once was high amenity transit to what is what's the 2021 version of that. Now to give you a little bit of traffic flavor, I'm going to talk about the Q jump at Chicago and Lake. This Q jump really started with a Minneapolis pilot project to paint a dedicated lane near that Lake Street Transit Center. The issue with that, though, as D-Line started through design, that D-Line would no longer serve the Chicago Lake Street Transit Center. So as we look at kind of where that dedicated lane pilot is, it's a center running southbound lane that was striped out, and then you notice it dives into a left turn pocket into Lake Street Transit Center. That's that Midtown area, but doesn't extend all the way to Lake Street. So as our team put together thoughts of, asked a lot of questions to the partner agencies to collaborate amongst, Metro Transit, Minneapolis, and Hennepin County. How can we build off the momentum of this pilot? And then what is that right balance of passenger throughput that kind of that meets the needs of all these competing street use needs for each partner agency? And how could this segment really complement the investment that's being made in the D line? And the cool story is that it's resulted in the first BRT queue jump for all the system that Shaheen was speaking about earlier. I should say it's not out there yet, but it's under construction. And as you see in our rendering, we moved the dedicated lanes to the outside lane and provided our station design. So as I mentioned, the bus no longer turns into the transit center, but provides a faster connection so we can stay in line on Chicago Avenue, and provide, thoughtful pedestrian crossings back to the transit center. And then a queue jump, as you see towards the left of the screen here. It's a mixed right turn lane and queue jump across Lake Street to then allow the bus to maneuver back into through traffic to head south. As Shaheen touched on, we're under construction as of April 5th. Blame Mike for any issues you may have, but it's really cool. Our contractors, Thomas and Sons, they came in under budget here with a $26 million bid, and really looking forward to seeing this through to December. One of the pieces that to highlight, Shaheen talked a lot about the foundation and below aspects, but as you look at the shelter itself, construction, and how that construction approach is a little unique is it's really modular. It's a different kit of parts that's allowed to provide consistency across Metro Transit, easier maintenance, easier if some glass is broken. Those parts are all readily available at their shop to be replaced. And then as it comes to a contractor setting that, these are pictures from C-Line, but it's really, you're playing with Legos here. You're placing your blocks with the crane truck and then end up with just a beautiful station at the end of the day. As I mentioned, 2022 is going to be a fun time. It's going to be just an exciting time to see this project open, all the project partners' hard work pay off, and look out for some celebration dates. Bundle up, but we're Minnesotans, we can handle it, right? And appreciate everyone's time today. Courtney, anything else? Am I still on?
You're still on. Excellent job. We're going to open it up for questions. If anybody has any, I didn't get any through the chat, but you should be able to unmute yourself, so feel free to jump in with any questions if anyone has any. All right, got one through the chat. Says, with many more people likely still working from home in the post-pandemic world, are there persuasive arguments for maintaining transit funding at pre-pandemic levels?
Shaheen, I think you're on mute if you're. Yeah, I was looking for the unmute button. Thank you. I would say, yeah. I mean, I think, again, something to highlight is that this transit is often, and BRT lines are often looking to be constructed in areas where there is a lot of ridership. With Route 5, even with the pandemic, because of the communities that it goes through that still rely on public transit to get to work and to get to their daily routines, we do anticipate that it would be required. There may be a shift in focus in where transit funding is applied as a result of changes in ridership. But I think what Metro Transit is focusing on is to be able to provide an equitable service for everybody throughout the metropolitan area. So yeah, I would say, obviously funding will depend quite a bit on what leadership decides to allocate, but within BRT at Metro Transit, we certainly see this to continue, as it's also proven to once we construct, we finish a BRT line, for example, we have seen ridership go up as well. So as you provide a higher quality, more reliable service, people do tend to come to it as well.
Yeah, I just add on, I mean, we all want to get back out to our lives again. And that's what we're seeing across the country. If we broaden this besides just Minnesota, that's a common theme amongst everybody. So how we travel and the times we travel in may be different, but the value that transit brings is still tremendous in connecting our communities. And really BRT is what we're seeing is such an avenue for innovation to occur through now, that as this wave of technology advancements come, whether it's at the station or the bus, it's really a great return on that investment. And there's other things to consider than just ridership. It's the development around it, and that's changing too. So I look at it more as an exciting time to be in transit here coming up.
All right, any other questions, either via the chat or by unmuting yourself?
We must have covered it all, huh?
That's what I was gonna say. You did such a great job. No one has questions. All right, well, I want to thank you guys again for being here and presenting. Also, shout out to Natalie for bothering you guys till you agreed to present for us today. All right, what else do we got? Oh, Alliant, thank you for sending over that sponsor video that was playing before we all jumped on the call and started the presentations.